Hey everyone, this is Dr. Drizzle, and today I'm in Boise, Idaho at the depot with my new friend Chris, and he's going to tell us about this bell tower here. So Chris, I know nothing about this, so if you can just give us a little information about where we are and how it got here.
Absolutely. So we're in Boise, Idaho, and this depot, it was built in 1925. It was originally a Union Pacific depot. Now before 1925, to get to Boise, this is built on what's called a spur line, which is a single line that runs out to where the main line is, which is the dual lines that you'll see out in the desert. This spur line, before this was built, to get to Boise, you had to travel along the main line to a town south of us called Kuna. It's about 20 miles away, and then you would take a stagecoach up until 1925 into another area that wasn't part of the town yet, and then take a second stagecoach into Boise proper. So it was a really big deal to finally get a depot here for Boise, direct service to the capital. This was one of the last state capitals to actually get direct train service. Now you'll see this was built here on purpose, so out the front, when people would arrive on the train, they would walk out on the bricks below us and look out and see the Capitol. And you're just a little over a mile away from the state capitol at this point. And so it was built this way on purpose. A lot like in Paris, France, they line up a lot of the major monuments that way. Down below us, you'll see the Platte Gardens, and that was put in by Union Pacific in 1927. And there's actually koi fish that stay in there year-round. They're pretty hardy fish. Now these bells, each one is a different size and would make a different sound. And each of the bells are brass, and they have a coating over them. Now these three bells, they're missing a hammer on the right. So they've been disconnected. When all four of them were hooked up together, they would actually ring in what was called the Westminster chime, which is ding, 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 ding. Now, these three, now that they've been disconnected, only the biggest bell rings. And so we'll walk around and look at him. And the biggest bell, you can see on the crest of the bell when we get there, the founder date, which is 1926. And so these came out of Ely, New York in 1926, and they're hung up in 27. You can see some of the brass shining through and some patina from some of the coating that's worn off over time. Now this rings more like a grandfather clock, so the centerpiece doesn't actually ring the bell like a traditional bell. So what will happen, this currently rings at 8 times for 8 in the morning, 12 for 12 noon, and then 5 for 5 p.m. So at 5 p.m. when this rings again, the original mechanical timer, it's one story below us, has to be wound like a wind watch periodically. They use what looks like a big lug nut wrench to wind it. And at 5 p.m. it'll pull back this hammer and release it 5 times. Each time it hits the bell so hard, the bell actually vibrates over an inch. In the stationary hammer, you can see the strike mark there. So it's Wile E. Coyote loud. You don't want to be up here when it rings.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. Now out this way, you can see a good picture of the spur line that heads west. And so the spur line, this was part of what made this depot possible. Before 1925, the main line ran into a city west of us called Nampa, and it's one of the big cities in the Treasure Valley. Nampa is a big agricultural hub for Union Pacific. Union Pacific was very big about having a lot of freight, and so they were very happy just having that run through Nampa. So the city had to do a lot of convincing back in the 20s to convince them to build this way and build a depot here. And so it was a very big deal. They actually closed down the city essentially for the entire day to welcome the train on the first day of operation. And so there's a large newspaper clipping downstairs where you can see they had parades. It was a very, very big event, obviously because people were happy they weren't going to ride stagecoaches.
Right.
Now out here, you can see what's called the bench area of Boise. Now this bench area, there's a neat photo downstairs showing this, the depot, and then this main road out here called Vista in 1939 is a dirt road leading out then to the new airport. The original airstrip for Boise was actually over on the BSU property. So back in 1926, they actually had the first commercial air flight, which was done by a Boise gentleman by the name of Varney. Now, Mr. Varney, he had an open cockpit airplane, and he did mail runs. He serviced Wyoming and Washington. He later had more success doing that, got more planes, more pilots, and that later became United Airlines, which originally was based in Boise, Idaho. Ironically, That was 1926, a year after this station was opened, and in the 90s it would be airplanes that would finally take away passenger service here in Boise. So in the 90s, you could get a round-trip ticket on the airline to Portland or Salt Lake, which are the two major metropolitan areas close to us, for the same price as a one-way in the Amtrak. And so it really killed the ridership, and so Amtrak eventually pulled up service to what this was called the Wyoming line for Amtrak.
Okay.
And so freight still operates on this, and in fact on this spur line, if you follow it east of us, it goes to a business called Motive Power, and Motive Power to this day still builds train engines, and then once they finish them, they will send them west into the main line at Nampa and then ship them out. They just finished a major contract for Australia about 3 years ago now.
Right. So there's a lot of engineering here, but I imagine a lot of maintenance too. So how do you take care of all this?
So there is a lot of maintenance, and there's a lot of engineering as well. So if you look here on the floor, you'll see these drains. Now this is not the original floor, obviously. And if you look up, you'll see another system of drains there. The original building has these flats built in, and what would happen is water would collect up on those flats, seep through cracks in the bricks, freeze and expand, damaging the bricks, and then contract again. And you'll see some of the water wearing the wall there just below that flat. So Morris Knudsen, again being a local engineering giant, they built the Hoover Dam. That was one of the things they were known for. When the Morrisons adopted this, they put in the system of drains everywhere, and then the floors are actually angled in certain areas and channeled. So if there's a large amount of water that comes through these, because these are open year-round, it'll channel the water to different drains throughout the upper structure and protect the bricks.
Very nice. So how long have you been here?
I've been here for, 10 years this year.
Okay. And what made you want to come work here? What did you love in school that pushed you here?
So my dad was a history major, and I've always had a love of history and everything, and so they had an opportunity to work here. And so this is actually my part-time weekend job. And then I work full-time for the state of Idaho as a felony probation parole officer.
Very nice. Well, kids, what an amazing way for us to learn more about transportation now and then. So your challenge for today is to sort of research the area where you live and see where the trains were back in the day, how goods were delivered to the area that you live in now, and then how that's been taken over. And don't forget that we are growing every day in our ways to learn and engineer, so you need to stay in school, right, Chris?
That's correct.
You want to stay in school, and you want to get as much science and math and communication skills and social studies in that you possibly can, so that you can do interesting things like this on the weekend as your second job. Chris, thank you very much for being with us today. It's wonderful. We love Idaho, and I know it's Boise.
Boise.
And
yes.
I'm going to say that because I'm coming back. We're coming back to Boise. So this is Dr. Drizzle out.